It's the second season of the Magical Mommy Monday podcast. Jen and Angela are two moms raised on Disney magic, figuring out parenthood one day, one milestone, and sometimes one meltdown at a time. Thanks for listening and enjoy this week's new episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Magical Mommy Monday podcast. I'm Angela Dahlgren, here with my co-host, Jen Snyder. Today, we have Seth Kubersky, which you will hear is co-author of the Unofficial Guide to Universal Orlando Resort, Disneyland, Vegas, and Walt Disney World. He's also a contributor to many other magazines, online sites, theme park related, and more. So let's just jump right into the interview. So Seth, I need to ask where you're originally from because you said horror with Halloween Horror Nights. Jen, horror? That's how you say it, right?
Yeah, Halloween Horror
Nights.
Yeah.
Are you East Coast?
I am. I've worked so hard to disguise it, but I'm originally from New Jersey.
Okay.
I grew up just outside of New York City, and I would say that I have lots of family in New York, but to be honest, they have all fled now. They've all left New York and either moved to the Hamptons or to the Miami area and gotten out of New York. So.
I get it. It's been a long winter, so I have been dreaming of the same thing. So are you where are you now?
So I have been in sunny Orlando, Florida, since 1996.
Okay.
I pretty much moved south to avoid snow.
Yeah.
And
smart.
I'm never going back.
Yeah. Well, that East Coast accent sticks with you.
It does.
I try to get rid of mine, but it sneaks in.
It doesn't work. Jen likes to tell the story because I love hearing it. She used to work at Epcot. Well, now you have to tell him the story, Jen.
Oh, no, I used to work at Epcot in Innoventions in like 2005 to 2006-ish. And so when I started there, I had full-on Long Island accent. And so part of my spiel, I like ran a video game. So you build a spaceship and you fly through the air and zoom through the water and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I had it, and like people would that I worked with would like gather around just to hear the accent come out. And by the time I left, I had gotten rid of it and it's kind of stuck. But every once in a while, I really have to like focus on my mouth. Like, oh, it wants to move a certain way. Don't go AW. Don't go AW.
My mom is from Queens, and she adds R's where they don't belong and leaves them off where they should be.
Exactly. If there's an
I've
R,
inherited
you have
a
an
little
A,
of that.
and if there's an A, you add an R. Like, I don't know why that is, but yeah. Like my grandmother will call me Jennifer. Like she won't say the R. Like,
Jennifer.
Okay, yeah.
Jennifer. See, I bask in these conversations because I just have a boring Minnesotan accent.
No, I love yours.
Oh my gosh. So I just love it so much. But you moved to Florida in 96, you said?
Yeah, I graduated from the College of William and Mary. Okay. Tongue twister, with a degree in theater. And I had worked over the summer for the Busch Gardens theme park in Williamsburg. Oh, cool. And figured, I liked theme parks, and if I was going to work for one, it might as well be one of the best. So I literally packed everything I owned in a truck and drove down to Florida without a job or a place to live or any of that stuff.
Love it. I love that.
You could do that back.
I could do.
Yeah. You could do that back in the mid 90s. You could get away with that. I would not recommend that today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, but I mean, it takes a lot of like courage to do that. I think about, my husband and I talk about moving all the time, and Jen's been looking at real estate in Florida.
For kicks. I do it every once in a while. I go, should I?
It's too scary though. I don't think I could actually leave. And it's cold here. Oh my gosh, we were in a polar vortex. It was like -50 wind chill. It's awful too.
Yeah, it's, I don't mean to indulge in schadenfreude, but the other week when the entire country down through Texas was just frozen over and you looked at a map and the only place on the map, the whole country that was like a pleasant green instead of like black was Florida.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say if you're looking to invest long term, I would not go with waterfront property, especially in South Florida,
Yeah.
because you might find it underwater.
Yeah.
But I always say we live in Orlando, so we will have waterfront property,
Yeah.
oceanfront property someday
At some
within my
point.
lifetime.
Yeah, for
You're in it
sure.
for the long game, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the investment of the ocean front.
Yeah.
So when you went down there, no job, didn't know what to do. How did you get started figuring it out?
Well, I ended up so part of what got me down there was the unofficial guides,
Okay.
because as a kid growing up in New Jersey, we were not wealthy. We had, a big family vacation maybe once every 4 or 5 years.
Mhm.
And my favorite of those over my lifetime as a kid growing up were the ones to Walt Disney World. There was one where I was too young to remember, but I still have some pictures of me on Dumbo. The first one that really made an impression was about a year after Epcot first opened, and getting to ride things like the original Journey into Imagination. Um, I think it was right after Horizons had opened.
Mhm.
So that was still new, made a big impression. Um, and, then getting back there when I was a teenager and seeing like the what was then the MGM studios in its prime.
We still call it that. It's okay.
Yeah,
long
we
before
do.
Star Wars. So I had these few family vacation memories to cling to, but mostly I knew about theme parks from reading books. I went to the library and I would buy, check out from the library these big coffee table books. Like there's this great one on the making of Epcot from the 80s. But also the guidebooks. There was the Birnbaum's
Yes.
was the official guides, and that I
Mhm.
liked because it had photos.
Mhm.
But I found these unofficial guides. Yes, I probably have that exact one. Oh, 89. Yep. I got
89,
a shelf
92,
full of
88.
those. But then I discovered the unofficial guides, which actually told you when certain things sucked. Because
Yeah.
I learned that like the Birnbaum book would like rides, and then I would get on some of them and I'd be like, that wasn't quite as exciting as that description.
Yeah.
So I got really into the unofficial guides and especially the touring plans to the point where when I was a teenager and I was kind of lonely and bored, when I wasn't rolling up Dungeons and Dragons characters, I would put together touring plans for vacations that I knew I was never going to go on.
That's amazing.
You're not the only one who does that.
So that sort of planted the seed in my head of someday living in Orlando. And honestly, I originally thought I would work for Disney, but I moved down here and went straight to the casting building and filled out an application and had an interview and then waited for another interview and then a third interview. And in that time, I needed some money. So I
Mhm.
drove down to Universal and they were basically like, you have a pulse? Welcome to the team.
Sounds good.
Perfect. You're in.
Yeah. No, they made me take a test because of my degree was in technical theater. So they made me take a little quiz about, how to plug in a light and how to use a soundboard. And I guess I got more right than I got wrong. It was probably pretty close. But they put me to work at the Ghostbusters show. And I was there for the last month or so before Ghostbusters closed. That
Wow.
taught me my first lesson in heartbreak. I just sort of kind of bonded with the cast and felt like I belonged there. And they're like, all right, guys, we're closing down.
We're done now.
It's going to be Twister.
Oh.
So, and now Twister's gone and it's Jimmy Fallon, which that's the first rule of Universal. If you like something, go see it now because it might not be there next week.
Yeah.
And over the years, I spent time at the Terminator 2 3D show. I was there from the first Christmas that it was open for the first couple of years when it was like the hot e-ticket in the park. There was a time when that was like the #1 attraction at Universal.
Oh yeah,
and
I can see why.
and we used to run that like back to back every 20 minutes, doing 40 something
Wow.
shows a day.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
that was a fun crew to work with, and a lot of those same performers, a lot of those same people are still around working on the Born Stuntacular now. So
Wow.
Wow.
that's pretty cool. Yeah. Um, and I even did some time at the Barney Show, which is also closed. So everywhere I have ever worked at Universal is now extinct. It's not
You're
my
like, maybe
fault.
it's me.
Don't think it's my fault. And I also, I also did like Halloween Horror Nights. I stage managed haunted houses, and I did
Mhm.
special events. I was even there for the grand openings of City Walk and Islands of Adventure.
Wow.
That's
And that was
awesome.
kind of like a peak. The resort really expanded in the late 1999,
Mhm.
and then we hit like 2000, and we thought like we'd have all these guests rushing in, and like we'd be the most, and like it didn't quite work out that way.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I like got promoted, and then a few months later I got laid off. But it
Oh,
was really cool because I spent a while like getting just enough severance from Universal, and like they pay my insurance and stuff. And the day that was going to run out, they call and be like, "Hey, we got a short-term project for you to work on."
oh.
And I bounced around like that for another year or so, until finally I took a weird detour into working for the local government.
Oh.
Um,
Huh.
and that was a really strange sidetrack, but it gave me like a stable paycheck, and
Mhm.
like I had enough free time that
Mhm.
I could still, I could afford my annual passes to the theme parks,
Yeah.
and I could start blogging about the theme park. And this was like the really early, like early 2000s.
Mhm.
And there weren't a lot of like blogs and websites yet around about theme parks. And I stumbled across Jim Hill.
Mhm.
And I liked his website, and I started leaving
Mhm.
comments on his website. And that led to me writing articles for him, which kind of domino theory. And that's how I ended up like professionally doing travel writing.
That's so cool.
Wow. Oh my gosh, I'm thinking now, okay, where do I start? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, First you mentioned the Ghostbusters show.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Ghostbusters, two of my favorite movies ever. So, oh my gosh,
I'm
so
looking forward
jealous.
to finally seeing the new one. Hopefully it finally comes out, because we got teased with the trailers for that before the world shut down.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, you're right.
so
Yeah.
I think it's ready to go whenever movie theaters are back in business.
Wow.
Do you think so? I've never done a Halloween Horror Nights ever, and it's on my
Really?
bucket list, but I'm really scared to do it, but it's still on my bucket list. Do you think they'll bring back the Ghostbusters house?
Honestly, they've been taking those kind of big iconic properties and doing them one a year and really blowing them out.
Mhm.
And they haven't really been, with the exception of the American Werewolf in London, which did not get as good a reception the second time around. They've really refrained from doing a repeat. If the new Ghostbusters movie hits big, they might possibly do a house theme to that one.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But I think doing that original Ghostbusters house, I think you're gonna have to watch the YouTube videos if you want to experience that, because that was definitely one of their best, and I think that might have been a once in a lifetime. Uh, Beetlejuice, I got to see the Beetlejuice house on the one day that it operated, or one weekend that it operated this past year.
Oh,
And rumor is that that one will be coming back for Halloween this year, and that's another one on my all-time favorite lists.
oh yeah. Okay, that'll do for me. Um, what were your thoughts on the Back to the Future ride? Because it's another
I love
Oh,
series
that
I really
ride.
enjoy.
I know. I
I
miss that.
Never got to do it.
that was the ride that really sold me on Universal, because I can
Mhm.
remember the first time coming to Universal as a teenager. The park was only a year or so old. Jaws was closed. They were literally tearing Jaws out. Um, I think Earthquake might have been broken that day. I think Kong might also have been broken that day.
Gosh.
But I definitely remember getting to ride Back to the Future and thinking that Back to the Future was so much cooler than Star Tours. Um, and I love that movie and I love that ride. To be honest, by the time the ride closed down, it had reached the end of its span. It was in rough shape. Um, Honestly, the Simpsons ride now has been around, not quite, but almost as long as the Back to the Future ride was.
Wow.
And it's also it could use a refresh.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised. I'm not saying that this is happening anytime soon, but there is a lifespan to the Simpsons contract, unlike the Marvel contract. And Universal in Japan took the Minions ride and put that into their Back to the Future ride, and actually works much better on that big dome than it does on the screen that we have for,
Hmm.
which used to be the Jimmy Fallon, and before that Hanna-Barbera.
Hmm.
The whole front of Universal Studios Florida could really use a revamp. So if they wanted to transplant the Minions over to Simpsons and make that whole area Minions Land, and then rebuild the front of the park, I would be all for that.
I can see that. I mean, I've only been to Universal 3 times, but only for a day. So how much can you really get done in a day if you're a newbie like me?
Sure.
But I feel like I just kind of walk through that area where you see Shrek and Minions, and I'm like, oh
It's
well, I have all these other rides I need to do first.
I think we say in the book that it is the blandest entry area of any major theme park. It just looks like a bunch of boxes. At least
Yeah.
at least Hollywood Studios, they have sort of those bland beige boxes further back, but when you walk in, it's the old time Hollywood right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, Universal's entryway has always been kind of blah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And I kind of feel like, am I missing out? Like, should I do these? Should I try them on?
Yeah, Despicable Me, especially now that it does not have 3D, is cute. If you're a fan of the characters, do it once. Shrek has not aged well. You can rent that same movie for free on Netflix. Just watch it at home. Yeah, make it right and go check out when the showtime for Bourne Stuntacular is, because that's a winner.
I haven't done that one yet.
I haven't
So-
been in so many years. Like, I don't think I've been to Universal in about 15 or 16
Well, that's the thing
years,
with
probably.
Universal, like Magic Kingdom. Like if you go
Mhm.
10 years without visiting Magic Kingdom, there'll be one or two new rides, and that's
Yeah.
about it. If you go 10 years without going to Universal, pretty much every major e-ticket is completely different. It's a whole
Yes.
different park.
Mhm.
ET is basically the only thing left.
Yeah, definitely.
Why does everyone like ET?
Well, first of all, as far as characters go, I think ET is the closest that Universal has to a truly timeless, heartwarming, family-friendly character that even if you don't, your kids aren't super familiar with the movie, like everyone loves ET. How can you not love ET?
I was terrified of ET.
Okay, everyone on the planet
me.
minus one loves ET.
Yes.
The other thing, as far as rides go, Universal doesn't have a lot of all ages dark rides that are just, charming and detailed. There's no projections, there's no screens, there's no 3D, there's no motion simulating, there's no loops.
Yeah.
It's just something that you can go on over and over again. And like you can go on it now and you can go on it 20 years from now and show your kid, and it's still, and there's very little, there's so many rides at Disney that are like that.
Yeah.
At Universal, that's pretty much it.
That is my struggle with Universal, though, is that I feel like there aren't a ton of rides to bring small children. So I just end up telling parents, I'm like, wait till your kid's like 8 and then bring them. There's just not a ton for little ones.
The tricky thing is that there is actually, in non-COVID times, some great stuff for kids. It's not rides, but it's playgrounds. Universal's playgrounds, I think, are way better than Disney's playgrounds.
Really?
The problem is right now, because of COVID, a lot of that hands-on interactive stuff is shut off. Assuming that by summertime things have turned around and those kind of things are reopened, at Universal Studios Florida, you've got a whole kids zone area, and they've got a Curious George area that's like the world's biggest ball pit. And there's a wet side where like buckets and hoses you can spray, and then a dry side that's like climbing nets. Really well done. Reminds me a lot of like Sesame Place. And then over in Islands of Adventure, each of the islands has a really good kids playground, and each one is like aimed at a different age group. Like there's Seuss Landing is like really little kids.
Mhm.
I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen to If I Ran the Zoo Playground, since I Ran the
Yeah.
Zoo is now been withdrawn from sale.
Right.
There's none of the things that are objectionable about that book are included in the playground.
Right.
So
Mhm.
hopefully that will stay around with only minor changes. But that playground is really interactive, a lot of fun for little kids. Kind of
Mhm.
medium-sized kids have the Popeye playground, which is like the ship that they can climb on, and they can actually shoot water guns at people who are riding the water rides. And then like for like tweens and adults, personally, it's my favorite thing. They've got Camp Jurassic, and it's this dinosaur themed like tree houses and mines and things you can crawl through. And like I could
Mhm.
spend hours there.
Is
It
that
is
not going to be open
so
right now?
right now that section is blocked off. Anything
Oh,
that
bummer.
is really high touch and involves a lot of surfaces that would have to be sanitized
Yeah.
are blocked off. I really think that we're going to see, by the time we get into the peak season of the summer, and supposedly majority of Americans will be able to get vaccines. I think
Mhm.
that stuff is going to open back up by the time that the travel season really rebounds. Um, you are totally correct that there are not a lot of rides that kids who are too small to sit up by themselves can ride. There's no, it's a small world,
Mhm.
that you can take an infant on. But there are a good number of there's spinner rides like similar to Dumbo in Dr. Seuss and also in Simpsons, and even the train ride, they let you take strollers on that, and that's great for all ages. You can definitely find a day's worth of stuff to do with a little kid there, but I would hold off until probably summertime. And definitely once your kids reach that like 48 inches is kind of magic.
Mhm.
52 is the best,
Mm-hmm.
but 48, once they're above that, they can ride pretty much everything.
Okay, that's good to know.
I feel like I'm having, as you're explaining some of these playgrounds, I'm like, oh yeah, I know about that. Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
I feel like Disney does not have as many
No.
anymore.
No, and also at Disney, the ones they have, like there's the Dino Land, the Boneyard,
Mhm.
and the Casey Jr. Soak and Splash.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all blocked off right now as well.
Yeah. And it does remind me, as you're explaining them and thinking back to them, it does remind me a lot of Sesame Place, because I've definitely been to Sesame Place now. My kids are 6 and 4, so I've been there
Langhorne,
more
Pennsylvania.
recently. Of course, easy
Yep.
drive. So I've been there more recently than I have Universal, but I'm like, oh yeah, they do. That does have that
And
same.
I will say one last pitch for families with kids. Universal, I think their kid swap system is superior to Disney's. Disney is basically like one adult goes through by themselves while the parent stays out with the kids, and then they get like a fast pass to basically jump in the fast pass line. But sometimes that fast pass line can be really long, and it means that you're separated and you're not experiencing things together. So what Universal does, and right now a lot of these child swap rooms are also closed off. It's another thing that I think that's going to reopen soon. The whole family waits in the queue together. And then when you get just before boarding, there's a private area called the kid swap room. Usually there's a TV that they can watch. Sometimes there's games or toys. At Fast and the Furious, there's this really cool like little slot racing machine where kids can do little remote controlled cars. You wait together all the way up into the boarding. And so the kids who aren't tall enough can still see the pre-shows. And then the parents just swap off right there at the boarding station, and the kids are entertained right there instead of having to wait a second time
Oh, that's
through the
cool.
fast pass line. So it saves a lot of time, and it's some of those child swap rooms are really cool. Like at the one for Forbidden Journey, you get to watch the first 20 minutes of the first Harry Potter movie.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I like this.
I know.
I feel like I would have never known about this beforehand.
Yeah.
It's something, they don't necessarily advertise it. You just got to make sure you ask if you got a little one, where's the child swap room? Always ask.
Okay. So you you work full time for the Unofficial Guide, but you also are a contributor for several magazines.
Well, hey, everyone's got a million full-time jobs.
This
Come
is
on,
true.
this is 2021.
If you're in the theme park business, you do a lot of different things.
Yeah, so I've been contributing to the Unofficial Guides since the 2012 edition of the Unofficial Guide to Disneyland. So I authored that book, which obviously is kind of on hold right now, but we're seeing hopeful signs. So maybe we'll be able to get a 2021 edition out a little late this year. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And I also am the co-author with our founder, Bob Selinger, of the Unofficial Guide to Las Vegas. And I put in my 2 cents on the Walt Disney World book. But in addition to all that, I have a weekly column in Orlando Weekly, which is our kind of alt-weekly newspaper. And I contribute to Attractions Magazine, and I co-host their weekly podcast. I'm also available for bar mitzvahs and weddings. I could make balloon animals. They all look like a snake, but I can make them.
But I can pull it off.
Oh my God. So that's all you do? All right.
That's
Nothing else.
Show over. Okay.
Yeah. Here I'm telling Jen, I'm like, well, I just remembered that I wrote a stroller article in one of the Unofficial Guides.
Oh, that's right. That's
and Seth's like, well, I co-authored like 5 of them. So.
That's right, and we still use that. That was actually a very useful guide, and we still definitely quote that material. So you're not getting royalties. Sorry.
No, I haven't.
Work for hire.
Yeah,
it's fine. I just got to use a lot of nice strollers. It was very helpful when my daughter was younger. Oh man, so cool though. You and Erin Foster, she's got the DCL book. You got all these.
Yeah, I am very jealous. I have not been on a Disney cruise for a couple years before the closure of everything. And Erin getting to work on the the cruise book. That's a dream gig.
Oh, she's the best too.
I did get to go a few years ago. Touring Plans did a one day at Disney where they had a representative at every Disney location around the world, and I was placed on one of the cruise ship boats. We were going out of Puerto Rico, and that was a fantastic trip.
I remember that. I think that was like either the year I got hired or the year before. It was like Touring Plans around the world or something. I remember reading about that. That was so cool that you guys did that. So what was your childhood like? Like, I know that you've always been interested in the theme parks, but what kind of sparked that? Like you said, you did like a younger trip that you don't really remember to Disney and then another, but what really was it that stuck? You mentioned a couple rides, but I mean, I feel like quite a few kids get to go to the theme parks.
We had some smaller parks in Jersey. There was one called the Land of Make Believe, which still exists in a slightly different form, and then another one called Fairy Tale Forest, which is long gone. But they were, I remember that they had these kind of creepy walkthroughs of sort of, non-licensed fairy tale characters, and they were both, very lovingly handmade by someone. These were not corporate kind of things.
That's a really nice way to word that.
This was very handmade.
There's so much love behind
it. Not store-bought stuff. But it was also, by the time that I went through, in the early mid 80s, it was all sort of slightly decayed, and so that like kind of sparked this fascination where it was like both creepy and like really attractive, like so, and I think anything that when we're a little kid that we find, both really beautiful but also really kind of a little disgusting, that those kind of things are like what stick to us and fascinate us. And also, like I said, a lot of it was in the library. Just I was a kid who loved to read, and I was interested. I love the Muppets. I was into theater, I was into magic, and so I would just read books out of the library, and just discovering the section of my library that had stuff about theme parks, and finding that some of those early books really sparked my imagination for sure.
Numberkins is an educational card game for ages 4 and up. With 7 ways to play, this teacher-owned math tool can be taught in 15 minutes or less. Go to numberkins.com, now available on Amazon.
Seth, you do theater still? I feel like I need more information.
Yeah, so I got my degree in theater, and that's actually, when I picked the College of William and Mary out of the schools that accepted me, it was because they had a really good law school attached, and I thought I was going to do pre-law. But then at a certain point in my senior year of high school, I realized that I didn't actually want to be a lawyer. I just really liked LA law. So I figured that I would go into theater instead, and I got really into my senior year of college and got into the theater program at William and Mary. So I got a degree in theater, and after I moved down here, working for the theme parks was great. Getting to work on the Terminator show. In terms of the technology, it was any theme park or backstage technician's dream.
Right.
But after a few years, I was kind of itching to do theater again. And my only real theater that I was doing that point was that I started a cast that did the Rocky Horror Picture Show here in Orlando for a number of years, called The Rich Weirdos. So we actually ended up moving it to the City Walk Cineplex, back when it was the Cineplex, when it was owned by a different ownership. Now it's Cinemark, who does not deal with the Rocky Horror at all. So it no longer exists here in Orlando. But for about 10 years, ran at that theater at Universal City Walk. But so I started volunteering at a local community theater called Theater Downtown. And, I did some really terrible acting. I'm an awful actor.
What?
But I'm terrible. I'm terrible. But because I get so nervous about forgetting my lines. I'm horrible.
This is not what I thought would come out of your mouth. Oh
but I was a pretty good stage manager and director. I did a bunch of shows. I started producing shows at the Fringe Festival. We have the largest international Fringe Festival, the oldest one in North America, not North America, in America, because there's ones in Canada that are even older. But one of the biggest in the world outside of the original one in Edinburgh. So it's gotten huge. And so I produced a bunch of shows for that. And now I write upwards of 40 or 50 theater reviews every year at the Fringe here in Orlando. That's over a 2-week period. So it's a busy couple weeks.
Oh my gosh. Clear your schedule those days. Oh my goodness.
Yep. Every May, I literally take 2 weeks off from working on the unofficial guides every May. I'm going to the Fringe. I'm going to be seeing about 100 shows. So don't call me.
So when do you take breaks?
I live in Florida. We have a heated pool. I don't really need to go away on vacation. I can just sit in the backyard. My work is what most people consider play. So I can't really complain about, I can't say, oh, I haven't had a day off in so long, because my day on is going and riding a roller coaster.
The other day.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a good segue, though, into my next question. Would you consider that the best part about your job?
Well, the best part about my job is definitely when we get letters from our readers who say that we really help them make their vacation better, or help them save money, or just that they appreciate the information that we get for them. That's by far the best part of the job. And just I've had some cool opportunities because of my job of getting to meet people I wouldn't otherwise meet, or getting to experience things that the average person has to save up for a long time. If I made if I if I wasn't doing this for a living, I could not afford to do a lot of the stuff that I do.
Right.
So I'm very grateful that I get to do for work what a lot of people, really work very hard for many years to be able to afford to do with their families.
Is there a hardest part?
I mean, there's some days that are rougher than others. The opening day of Hagrid's, when I stood in line for about 7.5 hours, and a good portion of that was in the rain. I've had better days than that.
Yeah.
But I can't really complain about, the worst day in a theme park is still better than the best day I had sitting in an office cubicle. So, the challenging, the only hard parts really come because of the nature of the publishing business, where every year, eventually a book has to be put onto a dead tree eventually. And I can only keep updating things so long. And Universal knows that and somehow can psychically intuit like the minute that my final update is due, and they will inevitably change something an hour after that. It's happened to me more than once, and so that's the hardest part, is knowing that as hard as I try, that the minute the book goes out the door, that there's probably something that's out of date.
Yeah,
exactly.
But that's why we also have websites.
Exactly. It could be updated. As far as the days, some difficult days, I think that was the one thing that Brian McNichols and I agreed on is, you're at a theme park for work, which is the best thing ever. And I'm never going to complain about it. But sometimes, when you've done like your third 16-hour day, you're just tired after a while.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I gotta say, I've spent a lot of days. I'm sure you've done this for touring plans too. I've spent full days, 8 hour theme park without ever riding a single ride. I've spent entire days just sitting at an exit, clicking a counter to see how many people are coming off of a ride, or just timing cycles over and over again for something to collect data. Or even just following a touring plan when you're following the touring plan for seniors, and like, okay, that's not my age demographic. Don't let the gray hair fool you. I'm not dead yet. Or for little kids, I personally am not really into riding kiddie rides, but I make a point of riding every single attraction and eating at every single restaurant that we profile in the books, even if it's not my thing.
Oh, gosh.
I'm gonna do it.
But the photo pass photos when they pop up are hilarious because if you're like a theme park blogger or in the community, you're inevitably like looking tired or you're on your phone because you've done this ride 60,000 times and you're like, yeah, okay. Like, what are we doing? Check what's next on the plan.
And I think it's all relative too, because absolutely is a job like that way better than sitting in a cubicle. But I think even when I was working at Epcot, and I've now joked on my podcast about like I would get annoyed some days, but still have the face on stage and then go in the break room and just like throw my keys across the room because it's just, but like thinking back on that, like, really your day was so frustrating. Come on. Like, but I think it's all, you're in the moment and you have different interactions with people, or you've had the same person yelling at you over and over, or whatever it is. So I think it's all relative. We can all complain a little bit.
I am very careful when I stream. I mostly try to avoid commentary. If people are messaging questions, I try to answer them. Yeah. But I know people don't need to hear my voice all that much.
Oh gosh, I'm the complete opposite, Seth. I ramble when I'm going live in the parks. You have way more self-control than I do.
I try to hold myself back.
You're that willpower.
Well, and I understand that, receiving letters from families that these books are so helpful, because I received my copy of the Unofficial Guide to Universal Orlando 2021 today, and I was so excited. Woo. Yeah, exactly. Here it is.
And you haven't read it cover to cover yet? It is only what, 408 pages?
I
I'm
have failed.
disappointed.
What
I
else
am-
do you
You've
have
had a whole
to do?
half a day.
I'm-
Come on.
I'm a
You don't
fraud
have
as a
2
podcaster.
kids.
I am not a professional podcaster. Come
goodness.
on. But I was just so excited because I haven't been to Universal Studios in over 15 years. I can't say that I'm going to go even in the next 6 months or a year, whatever. But the fact that I have all this information is so helpful because I literally just feel like I know nothing at this point about Universal, and I feel so detached from it that this is like going to make all the difference in the world, just having all this information. And I mean, the amount you put in here, it's like the
All right, don't
details
let
are
it intimidate. I
crazy.
know
It's
it's
a
like
little
you could use it as a doorstop.
But no,
A little
in a
overwhelming. It's
good
actually
way.
great. It makes this good seat cushion if you're like waiting for a show. You don't just.
Good coffee
No.
table book.
Yeah, no, it's in a great way though.
Yeah, I mean it is organized and broken down.
Yeah.
But don't get overwhelmed. Take it
Yeah.
in small bites. Read the intro, and also I'm recommending people this year read this special section that we put right up front. We've inserted first time we've inserted a whole new chapter in a long time, specifically about COVID and how the coronavirus has affected the theme park experience. And actually, a lot of that overlaps with the Walt Disney World experience too. It's kind of applicable at any of the major theme parks. And I think that's what a lot of people, if they are thinking of planning a vacation for later this year, that's the first question they have. So digest those first 20 30 pages, and then later work your way through, because it goes in an incredible amount of depth. And if you try to read it from A to Z, you're going to find yourself reading, you don't need to read every menu for every restaurant.
Right.
Feel free to skip around. You won't hurt my feelings.
What I love about the unofficial guidebooks, and this is how I personally use them, because I have several on my bookshelf, is as everyone should. I have my first one. Okay, side story. I actually randomly bought the 2008 edition because I was going with my family when I was in college. And then I had no idea, what the unofficial guides, what touring plans was. Little did I know that I'd be working for them
Welcome
6 years
Join
later. It was
us.
crazy. I know. So fun. Anyway, how I like to use the unofficial guidebooks is when I'm specifically looking for something, looking for information, that's when I'll swipe to a certain page. And then if I want to know about restaurants or a ride or something in detail, like what to do for kids here.
Handy dandy index. Pro tip, not actually the very last pages in the book, because the very last pages of the book are the tear out touring plans. So you got to look at a little further from the back to find that index.
That's what I use. I just use the index, and it's a lot less overwhelming because it's a ton of information and it could easily make you be like, where do I start?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you're all digital and stuff and you want to download the Kindle version, full search features.
Ooh, that's good too.
We need to advertise this. This debuted late January, right?
Yeah, it's been out a few. Other people got their copy before I did, so I don't know exactly when it came out. But the publication date was in January, and I have been talking to everyone that I can for the last month about it. But yeah, we with the way publication schedules work, normally we write this book in about August, and everything, because of the closure of the parks, everything got pushed back and compressed a bit this year. So instead of having it out for the holiday shopping season like we usually we had it out for the Martin Luther King Jr. Day shopping season. Yeah, so
that makes sense.
Yeah, it is very exciting to walk into Barnes and Noble and just see a flock of them there.
Yeah.
I may have gotten a picture with one the other day when I was in this store.
I would be excited just to walk into a Barnes and Noble again.
Right.
It's the weird thing with me is that I am still, I'm anxious about going to the grocery store. I live in Florida, so I've not eaten at indoor restaurants or anything like that. I go to a theme park 2 or 3 times a week and I feel perfectly safe. But I have not been inside a bookstore. I'm not going shopping at Best Buy.
Yeah.
I don't blame
nothing
you.
against Best Buy, but
Yeah.
it probably sounds strange to people in the rest of the country that I
No,
go to theme parks all the time, but I'm not, I don't
I think
like.
that makes sense. And I think I've said that. Like, if I was living down there, there's no doubt I would have gone to the parks by now, because for me, traveling to the parks and like going to the airport in an airplane, like all that makes me nervous.
Mhm.
And but also I know that living down there, I probably would be like, I'll get my groceries delivered.
Yeah.
I'll do all that,
Same.
but I'm going to go to Magic Kingdom. Like,
Right.
Well,
I would feel safe in the bubble, like, of it all.
here in Florida, there is no statewide consistency.
Mhm.
Depending on which city, which county,
Mhm.
there can be a different ordinance. Disney and Universal are the two places I know where rules are completely consistent and enforced consistently. And
Yeah.
really, I mean, there's no even my grocery store or my pharmacy, they might say what the rules are, but no one's kicking anyone out.
Mhm.
Whereas at Universal and Disney, they have kicked people out, they've publicized kicking people out,
Yeah.
and they're paying people an hourly wage to sit there with a sign saying we will kick you out. So I don't know what more you could want.
Yeah.
It's the best
Sounds
they
like
could
my
do under
type
the
of people.
circumstance.
I
Yeah.
know. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
Minnesota
Yeah.
still has the nationwide mask mandate, in any
Mhm.
public place. But
Mhm.
I mean, even with that, we haven't eaten inside a restaurant. Since last year.
Mhm.
Well, and you can't really eat al fresco in Minnesota this time of year.
It's a little difficult, Seth.
Yeah. A little chilly.
Well, Seth, thank you so much for being on our show. I'm so glad you
Yeah.
agreed to do this.
I feel like we just got started.
I
Anytime
do
you would
too.
like, we can really dig into more about Universal, and of course, I'm in the Disney parks,
Yeah.
reporting on them for the Unofficial Guide. So, would love to come back and chat with you more about any of that.
every new book debut, we're having you on.
You could have me on 4 times a year, and
There
we
you
would
go.
just scratch the surface.
I love that. Please thank
Anytime you want
Lillian
to talk
for
about
us.
taking the kids to Las Vegas.
Oh.
You know what, Seth? I have never been to Las Vegas.
Yeah, there was a time when I would say take the kids, but right now probably
That
not.
time is
not
past.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we need to do an episode where you plan my Vegas trip, because my husband keeps saying, "Do you want to go?" And I'm like, I don't know. Do I?
Well, step 1, leave the husband behind.
Right.
Yeah, just go on my own. Go see Celine Dion.
What happens in Vegas? that was the first thing you jumped to.
Right, yeah.
That's
I know,
so
like,
wholesome. That's
I
so
was like,
wholesome.
go. And what happens at Vegas? You're like, yeah, Celine Dion. She's going to
Yes.
sing My Heart Will Go On. It's going to be amazing.
I don't want to break your heart and tell you that she's been gone for years.
I'm there for the shows, though. I'm there for the shows.
Well, hopefully the shows will make a comeback, because they're still mostly on hiatus, and
Yeah.
that's a long and sad story that we can talk about on another episode.
On your
Exactly.
next episode.
My
with
next
us.
appearance.
That's right.
Exactly. Well, thank you again, Seth. Can you
Oh,
tell
my pleasure.
everyone where they can find you on social media?
Absolutely. You can find my personal account on Twitter and Instagram at S Kubersky, or at the UG series for our books. And most importantly, you can pick up a copy of this or any of the other unofficial guides at theunofficialguides.com.
Thank you to the Unofficial Guides for providing Jen and I with a copy of the book. I cannot wait to get mine.
Enjoy. Put it to good use.
Yes.
I'm going to get it soon, and I'm going to have it just in time for my trip. I'm so excited. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to give us a review on iTunes if you'd like. You can find us on Twitter at Magic Mom Monday, Instagram at Magical Mommy Monday, or you can email us at magicalmommymondays@gmail.com. I hope you're having a great day, night, whatever you are doing, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.